Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan ki jai. Mayapur Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai, Yamuna Mai ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulasi Maharani ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktavinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Glories
Krishna.
to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Hare Bol.
Krishna Vidaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Nalani Pachayani Navashesha Shanaradi Pastita Deshitarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, The Creation. Chapter 13, Dhritarashtra quits home, text 23. Aho mahiyasi jantor jivitasha yata bhavan bhima pavarjitam pindam adate grihapalavat. Aho mahiyasi jantor jivitasha yata bhavan bhima pavarjitam pindam adate grihapalavat. Aho mahiyasi jantor jivitasha yata bhavan bhima pavarjitam pindam adate grihapalavat. Everyone chant, please.
Hare Krishna. Aho mahiyasi janto jivita sayatha bhavan bhima pavarjitam pindam adate griha palavat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Aho mahiyasi janto jivitasha yatha bhavan bhima pavarjitam pindam adate gruhapalavat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go ahead, Mataji.
Aho mahiyasi janto jivitasa yatha bhavan bhima pavarjitam pindam adatte grihapalavat.
Aho mahiyasi jantor jivitasha yata bhavan bhima pavarjitam pindam adatte grihapalavat. Hare Krishna.
Okay, word for word translation. Aho, alas. Mahiyasi, powerful. Janto, of the living beings. Jivita asha, hope for life. Yata, as much as. Bhavan, you are. Bhima, of Bhimasen, a brother of Yudhishthir's. Apavarjitam, remnants. Pindam, foodstuff. Adate, eaten by. Grihapalavat, like a household dog. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. A sadhu should never flatter kings or rich men to live comfortably at their cost. A sadhu is to speak to the householders about the naked truth of life, so that they may come to their senses about the precarious life in material existence. Dhritarashtra is a typical example of an attached old man in household life. He had become a pauper in the true sense, yet he wanted to live comfortably in the house of the Pandavas, of whom Bhima especially is mentioned, because personally he killed two prominent sons of Dhritarashtra, namely Duryodhana and Dushasana. These two sons were very much dear to him for their notorious and nefarious activities, and Bhima is particularly pointed out because he killed these two pet sons. Why was Dhritarashtra living there at the house of the Pandavas? Because he wanted to continue his life comfortably, even at the risk of all humiliation. Vidura, therefore, was astonished how powerful is the urge to continue life. This sense of continuing one's life indicates that a living being is eternally a living entity and does not want to change his bodily habitation. The foolish man does not know that a particular term of bodily existence is awarded to him to undergo a term of imprisonment, and the human body is awarded after many, many births and deaths as a chance for self-realization to go back home, back to Godhead. But persons like Dhritarashtra try to make plans to live there in a comfortable position with profit and interest, for they do not see things as they are. Dhritarashtra is blind and continues to hope to live comfortably in the midst of all kinds of reverses of life. A sadhu like Vidura is meant to awaken such blind persons and thus help them go back to Godhead, where life is eternal. Once going there, no one wants to come back to this material world of miseries. We can just imagine how responsible a task is entrusted to a sadhu like Mahatma Vidura. Aho mahiyasi jantor jivitasya yata bhavan bhima pavarjitam pindam adate grihapalavat. Alas, how powerful are the hopes of a living being to continue his life. Verily, you are just like a household dog and are eating remnants of food given by Bhima. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachayane Nirvishesha Shannivadi Paschatadeshatarine. What a very powerful verse and purport this is. Like last week, also very powerful when Prabhupada's saying, describing how the materialistic householders think that, oh, the sannyasis, they're depending on Krishna, but they come begging from me, so I'm better than Krishna. So a very powerful description here. And it's the verse, today's verse starts off with this word aho. We've discussed before this word aho, that when there's something amazing or shocking or surprising, and aho, like alas, or amazing, or, you know, how wonderful is it? How amazing is it? How unusual is it? So Vidura is saying, this is incredible. How attached to life, even in this, the most abominable situation, for a kshatriya like Dhritarashtra to live like that is abominable. But for any person, not just a kshatriya, to be like that, humiliated constantly on a daily basis, to live in the state of perpetual degradation and humiliation and still clinging on to life. Oh, at least I'm getting, you know, I'm getting my meals. I'm getting some outward show of respect from Yudhishthira and at least 3 of the other 4 Pandavas. He's getting a show of respect. He's getting some meals, whatever. So this is very shocking, very amazing to Vidura, that jivita asha, the hope for life goes on even in the most abominable situation. Asha means hope. Just like, it's not at all the same thing, but this word asha that one of the symptoms of a person on the stage of Bhava Bhakti is Asha Bandha, that they have this hope. Oh, I hope, I'm completely unqualified, but I'm hoping for the mercy of Krishna. And for the materialist, Jivita Asha, they're hoping, oh, somehow or other I can maintain my life. Somehow or other I have this hope that I could fill my belly, that I could get some respect, that I can maintain the illusion of some comfort or some position. This is the Asha. This is the hope, Asha Bandha even. This is the hope against hope of the materialistic person. Oh, please let me somehow live comfortably. Therefore, Dhritarashtra is considered so degraded here. Degraded how? Well, first thing is, in the verse, let's see. Asha Mahiyasi Jantor Jivitasya. How amazing is it that this desire for material life continues? And it's interesting, in the purport says that this desire for life is actually a symptom of the fact that the Jivatma, the living entity in our pure state, is actually eternal. So it's actually natural that, yes, of course, we want to go on living. We want a permanent life that never ends. We want the permanent comfort, the permanent happiness, the permanent bliss and relationship and pleasure and life eternally unbroken. And it's natural that we want that, because that is our nature. That's actually who we are as eternal Jiva souls, as eternal parts and parcels of Krishna, Jiva souls. That's our nature. So naturally we desire that. But then when the soul becomes bewildered, when the soul in ignorance constructs this ahankara, this false sense of self, of who I am, based on a bodily existence, body, family, friendship, community, caste, jati, caste and creed, and this religion or this country or nationality or gender or whatever it may be, then when the false ego thinks like that, then this search for eternal life, eternal happiness becomes twisted and perverted into what we're seeing here in today's verse in Dhritarashtra. And because it becomes twisted and perverted like that, it becomes a source of instead of a source of eternal life, eternal happiness, it becomes a source of eternal frustration. So this is the degradation of Dhritarashtra. Not only he was clinging on to life, but what was he eating? Bhima apavarjitam. He was licking up Bhima's remnants. I don't know if that was literally being done on the plate, but figuratively, that's what he's doing. He's taking the remnants, the mercy, the leftovers of the Pandavas, who he tried to kill, who his sons tried to kill, and his sons were personally killed. Prabhupada mentions here Duryodhana and Dushasana, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I remember in Mahabharata that Bhima actually killed all of the sons of Duryodhana in the Battle of Kurukshetra.
Yes, yeah,
that's correct,
all,
yes.
All 100 sons, yeah.
Yes. So just imagine, and this is the person who he's eating the remnants of. He's getting food from this person. So how degraded, how degraded, how unfortunate. But he was overlooking it because, oh, I'm going on, at least I'm clinging on to my life. And also, this is going back a few months in the class, we heard how Yudhishthira would be very respectful to Duryodhana and even create an illusion that for Duryodhana's, I'm sorry, not Duryodhana, for Dhritarashtra's benefit, that he was still the king, that he was still in charge, let him perform some rituals, be the head person at the ritual, be the head person in the assembly, even though he actually had no position and wasn't really contributing anything. And he ordered all of his brothers and all of the members of the household to treat him with respect. But Bhimasena was the only one who, because he was so antagonistic and he was powerful enough, he was the only one in the whole Pandava household who ignored that injunction of Yudhishthira. And he was actually insulting and harsh with Dhritarashtra. I told this Mahabharata story many months ago, and we were discussing this, how he would sometimes come before Dhritarashtra, being with his big, gigantic physique and gigantic muscles. And Prabhupada sometimes described how to wrestlers, they'll like slap their arms and slap their muscles, just like modern day, they may flex their muscles. And he would say, how powerful are these arms, that with these arms in the battle of Kurukshetra, I killed, Duryodhana and Dushasana and all the sons of Dhritarashtra. And he would say that before Dhritarashtra himself. And Dhritarashtra, because of this Jivita Asha, he bore that, he accepted that, not out of humility, but out of a vain clinging to an awful degraded life. So, and not only that, but now Vidura, when he wants to start preaching to his unfortunate brother, he brings this up and he points it out to him. Look at how awful it is, because sometimes we may be in an awful situation, but we may think, oh, this is how it is. This is what it is. I'm just trying to get by one day at a time, blah, blah, whatever excuses we make. And it may take another person to point it out to us that, wow, the way you're living is not really good. You really need to do something about this. Therefore, the next words, Yata Bhavan. Yata Bhavan means this is you. This is not some theoretical situation. Just like for us, we're hearing about Dhritarashtra and we think, oh yes, the theoretical situation, this Dhritarashtra is so corrupt and so degraded. So we're thinking this is someone else. But as Vidura is saying to him, Yata Bhavan, this is you, this is your life. This is your fault, this is your degradation. So we also have to remember in the same way that, that this applies to us also. This is not just, some theoretical person. This is some situation long ago, and we can laugh, that Dhritarashtra, look at how degraded he was. But we also have to remember, Yata Bhavan, this is also us, this is also me. Yata Bhavan. And then Bhima Pavrich, I'm eating the remnants of Bhima. How degrading, how awful. This is, do I have this here? Oh yeah, right. The different types of food in the mode of ignorance that any kind of reasonable person would not want to eat. Yata yama gatarasam, food yata yama. Yama means a period of time of 3 hours. So food that's old, leftover food, more than 3 hours old. Just like we may have heard that Krishna's Leela is Astakala Leela. The day is divided up into 8 periods of time. So 8 periods of time in the day, divide that into 24 hours is 8 divisions of 3 hours each. So that Astakala Leela is also sometimes called Ashtayama Leela. Over foods. Gatara, some food that doesn't have any juice, that doesn't have any taste, tasteless, nasty food. Puti, payushitam, stinky food, rotten food, disgusting food, stale food, all of that's rejected. And uchishtam, apicha medyam, the remnants of others. Remnants of others are not to be taken. This is degrading. This is unclean. This is mode of ignorance. Remnants of a Vaishnava, that's a different issue. But generally speaking, in terms of the modes of nature, this is in the lowest mode of just taking someone's remnants. Or Prabhupada also speaks earlier in the Bhagavatam. He says 3 things. My internet connection is unstable, it says. I hope you don't lose me. Prabhupada describes earlier in the Bhagavatam, he says 3 things sap human energy. We talked also last week how energy that we use in our devotional service. And he said 3 things drain that human energy. Over sense gratification, over endeavor for material things, and over dependence on the mercy of others. So this is Dhritarashtra. He's over dependent on the mercy of others and eating the remnants of others, but not only over dependent and eating the remnants of others, but of the person who defeated and killed his whole family. So how degrading, how awful is this? So therefore, what is Vidura doing bringing this up? Is he just insulting him? He's not insulting him. He's softening him up to make him able to appreciate the path of spiritual life and the path of renunciation from this awful situation. Sometimes, just like this word aho, something shocking. So he also needs to, shock, like shock treatment. He needs to give Dhritarashtra this shock treatment to snap him out of his illusion. Because without that, if he's just in this vain hope, oh, I'm still a king, I'm living, I'm eating, then he won't be able to take the spiritual life. Without that, with that material sense of material comfort, one cannot take properly the spiritual life. One needs to feel and realize the insecurity and the danger of material life. Prabhupada wrote, he said, such is the power of uttering the holy name. There is not the least exaggeration in this statement. Actually, the Lord's holy name has such powerful potency. So he's glorifying the power, the potency of the holy name. But then he goes on, but there is a quality to such utterances also. It depends on the quality of feeling. A helpless man can feelingly utter the holy name of the Lord, whereas a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. I think we discussed this in the question and answer period last week. Mother Shobha Radhe brought up about a person in material comfort, it being difficult for them to take up spiritual life. Wasn't that brought up last week, Mother, if I'm remembering correctly? So Prabhupada is saying that if you want to chant the holy name, if you want to take the spiritual life, the potency of it is there. The potency of it is real and amazing. But that potency depends on a certain quality of practice. And that quality is very difficult to be there when one is living in great material comfort or material satisfaction. One needs that feeling of helplessness to really chant, to really serve, to really love Krishna. Takes that feeling of helplessness that I have no other shelter. My shelter of friends, family, wealth, bank balance, position, nation. If you're feeling that as your shelter, then you won't be able to fully or properly take shelter of Krishna. So where does Prabhupada say this? That bit I read, that a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. That's from his commentary and teachings of Queen Kunti on the famous Kunti Stotra, Janmaishwarya Shruta Shribir Edamana Puman, Naivar Havitat Yabitatum Vai Twam Akinchana Gochara. That those who are on the path of this material comfort, this material shelter of Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta, Shri. Oh, I appeared in a big family, respectable family. I have all my grandparents, my parents, my wife, all my children are there. My grandchildren were a great dynasty, blah, blah, blah. I could trace my lineage. My great grandparents came over on the Mayflower, or my great grandparents are in this this gotra or that gotra from this sage or that sage or whatever it may be. So Janma Aishwarya, I have so much wealth. I'm a rich man, and automatically in this world, if you're a rich man, you get more respect. It's, in one sense, it's natural, but it happens even sometimes in our movement. It'll happen that a person just by having money will get so much respect. What to speak of in the material world, a rich person gets so much respect. In the movie and Broadway play Fiddler on the Roof, some of you may or may not be familiar with it. There's one line in one song where the star of the show is dreaming, oh, if I could be a rich man. And he says, if I were a rich man, then all the men in town will come to me for advice. And do I know it? Do I have knowledge or not? It doesn't matter. Because if you're rich, they think you know. Jan Maishwarya, wealth, Shruta, material learning, and Shri, material beauty. All these things are so captivating, and people take shelter of it if they have it themselves, or if not, they worship it and envy it in others. And such a person, Edabana Madak Puman, Madak. Remember last week, also in last week's verse, that word pramata was there, that the insanely attached householder, mata means mad, insane. So Edamana Madak Puman, a person goes crazy by being attached to these things. What does crazy mean? It doesn't mean necessarily that they say, oh, just like the old trope used to be that the crazy person is in the insane asylum like this and put on a hat and say, oh, I'm Napoleon. Or sometimes crazy people think they're Jesus or think they're this or that. But that's not what it means. Crazy means you're thinking you're this material body. You're thinking that birth, family, wealth, opulence, beauty, material learning are my shelter. This is your madness, your insanity. Edamana Madak Puman. Naivarhat Yabidatum Vai. And such a person cannot address the Lord feelingly. So who can address the Lord feelingly? What person can approach the Lord and see the Lord very easily? Twama Kinchana Gochara. Kinchana means something. Akinchana means not something or nothing. Akinchana means the person who has nothing, who has no material attachment, no material possession. He's not mad after increasing family, wealth, material learning, beauty, all these things. That's akinchana. And akinchana gochara means such a person has Krishna very easily within his field of vision. Such a person can very easily see Krishna and approach Krishna. So Dhritarashtra was so degraded in his life that he would rather accept the table scraps of the killer of his family than give up these things, this attachment. This is the opposite of akinchana. And for a kshatriya or any reasonable person or higher class person to do this, so abominable. So abominable that Vidura says you're like a dog. Griha palavat. Griha pala means the dog. Griha is the house, and pala means protector. So the protector of the house is the watchdog. In Vedic culture, the dog would never go inside the house. This would be like inconceivable that the dog goes inside the house. But sometimes they would reside outside the house and they would be like watchdog, Griha pala, protecting the house. So he says, you're living just like a dog. Actually, I'm guessing I don't know, but I'm guessing in India today. Indian culture, like I said, traditionally, is not very fond of dogs. But nowadays, probably everyone has a pet dog in India nowadays. So anyway, in Vedic culture, in traditional culture, to call someone a dog, oh, this is a big insult. So Vidura is getting so heavy with his brother, calling him a dog. This is a big, big insult in Vedic culture. Prabhupada, when he was giving his Bhagavat Dharma discourses, he spoke about this. And he was preaching on that verse, Swavid Varahostra Karai Samstuta Purusha Pashu, that degraded persons who are like Swavid Varahostra Karai, dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. They glorify other animal-like persons. And they never let the pastimes of Krishna touch their lips, such persons. So these four animals, Prabhupada would, and such a person, actually the verse says, such persons never lend their ears to the katha, the discussion of Krishna called Gadagraj. This name Gadagraj is a little bit interesting. Gada was one son of a different wife of Vasudeva, a sister of Devaki that Vasudeva was also married to. And she had a son, Gadagraj. So Krishna's, what would that be, half-brother? Krishna's half-brother. And he was the elder brother, so he's Gadagraj, the elder brother of Gada. And another name that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, Gadagraj means one who stands in front of you, stands before you, and protects you from all disease. So the disease means bhava-roga, this material disease. So Krishna protects his devotees from that material disease, or as Prabhupada translates Gadagraj, he says, the deliverer from all evils. So these materialistic persons who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses, they never want to engage in Krishna Katha. Who will actually save them, and which will actually protect them and save them from this material disease of being mad after Janma, Aishwar, Shruta, Shri. So dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. We'll skip dogs, the hogs. Why are the hogs an example? Obvious example, Prabhupada says, and he says, he translated it as village hog. Not like a forest hog, but a village hog. Because the forest hog is, digging up some roots or eating some leaves or whatever. But what does the village hog eat? We know what the village hog eats. So this is the example of a materialistic person. Any disgusting thing, any degraded thing, any nasty thing, they'll eat. Or any disgusting, degraded, nasty act that they'll perform for sense gratification. Oh, if it gives me sense gratification, I don't care how degraded it is. This is the example of the hog, the stool-eating hog. Dogs, hogs, camels. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that camel represents one who works very hard for a living, because the camel carries a big burden. And Prabhupada gave a different, very fun and interesting analysis, saying that the camel likes to eat thorny bushes. And when it eats those thorny bushes and is chewing the thorns cut the tongue of the camel and make the tongue bleed. And the camel is tasting its own blood and thinking, oh, these thorns are so delicious, not realizing that he's tasting his own blood. He's relishing his own suffering. He's literally relishing his own suffering. So this is example of the camel. And then dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. The example of the asses, Prabhupada switched it a little bit. He said, sometimes he would say that the ass is the example of the animal that carries the big burden. Just like in India nowadays, probably still in some places, you'll see the washerman with the big load of laundry on the back of the ass, of the donkey, or at construction sites carrying bricks. Probably everything is all trucks now. But I could remember, in past visits to India, still seeing that, the asses with the big load of bricks or the big load of laundry on its back, working so hard. And Prabhupada would say, grass is growing everywhere. The donkey could go anywhere and eat grass, but he thinks, oh, I have to carry the bricks. Oh, I have to carry the laundry. Otherwise, my master won't give me a little grass. So this is the mentality of the ass. And the other mentality, which Prabhupada describes, is that the ass will go to the she-ass for sex. And when it tries to have sex with the she-ass kicks him in his face. And he's thinking, oh, I'm in love. I'm going to have sex. She's kicking me in the face. Very nice. So hogs, camels, and asses. And watch the example of the dog. The dogs are degraded because they become the servant, the slave of a master. Prabhupada said, just like you may go to college and you may get big degree, BA, MA, PhD, you're a big scholar. But as soon as you get out of school, what do you have to do? You have to go from business to business. Oh, my dear sir, oh, please accept me as your servant. Please give me some engagement. Please let me become your dog. This is we call this the job application process, but this is what it is. it's becoming a dog. So, and this is, again, Dhritarashtra. Oh, please, oh, kind Bhima, please give me your remnants so I could live comfortably, but becoming the most degraded in the process. And the dog, again, being a dog, being called a dog is the most degrading insult in Vedic culture. Let's see. Oh, yeah. This also came up in Vishnu Gada Prabhu's morning Chaitanya Charitamrita class a few weeks ago. Prabhupada said that the dog, of all animals, the dog is the #1 non-devotee because it has this special envious proclivity that it wants to urinate on the tulsi plant. So the dog is the #1 non-devotee. And again, also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that another quality of the dog, the fault of the dog, is that it becomes needlessly angry. Just like if you're walking around in America or in India and you walk by a dog, what happens? Starts barking at you, needlessly angry, no point in it, no reason for it, but it comes needlessly angry, barking or biting at someone for no reason. And all of these qualities apply to Dhritarashtra in his degraded state. So the dogs, hogs, camels, and asses are going on. All these qualities are going on. Then again, after discussing this verse at length in the Bhagavad Dharma discourses, I'm sharing this just because it's fun and funny. One person in the question at the end said, you say that if we behave like this, then we're like a dog, or even in our next life, we may become a dog. And one man said, but I don't think that's so bad. Dogs are nice. I wouldn't mind being a dog. I'd like to be a dog in my next life. And Prabhupada's response was, you have... I'm sorry, it's just so funny. Prabhupada says, you have my blessings. That the man is saying, oh, being a dog is nice. And Dhritarashtra is thinking, oh, being a dog is fine. Eating Bhima's remnants, living like a dog in the house of those I tried to kill. This is fine. You have my blessings. So this is the reality of the insanely attached materialist who has all these other asha, all these other hopes to live for comfort, for sense gratification. And he thinks that all of these things will come through family relationships, through wealth, through material education, through material beauty. This is the madness, the foolishness of it. And Yata Bhavan, Vidur is saying to Dhritarashtra, this is you. And he's also saying to us, this is you, or this is me. This is our situation. So this is the very intense, very strong preaching. And Prabhupada says in the purport, let's see if I could find that. A sadhu like Vidura, this is from near the end of the purport, a sadhu like Vidura is meant to awaken such blind persons and thus help them go back to Godhead. If someone's asleep and you need to wake them up, like there's some emergency, there's a murderer loose in the house, or the house is on fire and someone's asleep, you don't go in and say, Prabhu, excuse me. Like, I don't know if you can hear me over the microphone, whispering very softly, oh, could you please wake up? It's time to get up. There's a fire. No, you don't do it like that. You go, wake up, there's a fire. Get up, you fool, get out of bed, run, save yourself. This is how you awaken a sleeping person in a dangerous situation. So this is us. Prabhupada says a sadhu like Vidura is meant to awaken such blind persons. Prabhupada would also say that sadhu means one who cuts, that you need to cut the illusion, very strongly cut the illusion of the conditioned souls. And then he finishes the purport. He says, we can just imagine how responsible a task is entrusted to a sadhu like Mahatma Vidura. So this preaching is a sacred trust for the devotee, such a responsible task. And Prabhupada would preach like that sometimes, very strongly like Vidura, very critical. One instance, one story was at the opening, like the official inauguration of Chaitanya Chandrodaya Mandir in Mayapur. And at that instance, some local government minister showed up, just like when, whenever these things happen, it's normal to invite some, mayor or government representative or something like that as a guest of honor. So this Bengali government minister showed up for it. And when he got up to say some words at the opening ceremony, he actually started glorifying, I don't know who it was, the Prabhupada Leelamrita just said he started glorifying some impersonalist Mayavadi sannyasi. So I don't know which one of the multitude of Mayavadi sannyasis it was, but he started glorifying that person. And then he said, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, maybe he was an incarnation, maybe not, I don't know, but I'm sure he did some good work, offering some, slighting words to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then after that, Prabhupada got up, and I don't know if I don't think there's a tape of it, and he was speaking in Bengali, so his Western disciples couldn't understand what Prabhupada was saying, but they could understand that he was speaking very strongly and very critically, criticizing what this minister had said very powerfully. And that after the ceremony, Prabhupada was sitting with the disciples, and he was talking about how he spoke so strongly to that government minister, and Prabhupada goes like this, with his fist in his hand, I have smashed him. So sometimes Prabhupada would do like that. He would smash, or he would cut when it was appropriate, when it was necessary, to either to awaken a sleeping soul or to teach those others around him what the actual standard was. Another time, this is also very early in Krishna consciousness movement, there was one young devotee, aspiring devotee, who was a little crazy. And one time he got up after the class and he started sort of ranting, and he said, I'm not meant to sit in a temple and meditate. My father was a boxer. I'm meant to run in the woods and run on the beach and gulp great breaths of air and live life. And Prabhupada just said to him, then go do it. That sometimes he didn't have patience for a person's nonsense. He would just cut them. If that's what, then do it. You want to ruin your life, then do it. And actually, for the guru to speak like this when he chooses to do so, if a proper guru is actually proper, and the devotee relishes it, being chastised by the guru. Prabhupada himself said about being chastised. I think the instance was, he was in a lecture, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was giving a lecture and Prabhupada was there. And in the middle of the lecture, some other guest sitting next to Prabhupada turned to Prabhupada and asked him some question while the lecture was going on. And Prabhupada, I guess to be polite, gave some answer or gave some response. And Bhaktisiddhanta indicated to Prabhupada, said, oh, I'm speaking and now you're speaking. Do you want to get up here and speak? And then he turned to the other person next to Prabhupada and said, oh, Babu, do you think you have purchased me with your certain amount of rupee donation? So Bhaktisiddhanta, sometimes he was called Singha Guru, Lion Guru, because he was could be so sharp and so cutting like that, cutting like a knife. And Prabhupada said about that instance later on when recounting it, he made the comment that that was one of my brilliant times when I was chastised by Bhaktisiddhanta. So he considered that a great mercy. And even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Guru More Murka Deki Karila Shashan, that my spiritual master chastised me and he insulted me, said, you're a fool. Don't waste you're such a fool. Don't bother studying Vedanta. You just chant Hare Krishna. That's this cutting, this very strong preaching, this very strong reaction for cutting, for awakening the sleeping person. One other time, leading into my next point, Prabhupada was going to visit the Indian consulate in New York because he wanted to get visas At that time, sometimes it was difficult for the Western devotees to get visas to India. So Prabhupada went to talk to someone at the consulate to arrange for visas for his devotees to go to India and preach. And this was early, so maybe at that time, even the 3 main Indian projects were still being built and still being developed. And he went with Kirtiraj Prabhu, who was there. And he went, and Kirtiraj and Prabhupada went in to meet with the consular official who was giving him a hard time. And Prabhupada started like getting very heavy with the man and chastising him and, talking just so strongly and harshly to this person. And finally, he got the person to agree, and he got the visas for a certain number of devotees. And afterwards, Prabhupada said to Kirtiraj, Prabhupada said, I spoke very strongly to him, didn't I? Kirtiraj agreed. And then Prabhupada looked at him and said, yes, I can do this, but you cannot. He said, I am an old man. They don't take me seriously. But if you were to speak to someone who is older than you or your age, and if you speak very strongly, they will become offended. But I am an old man, so I could do this, but you cannot. So sometimes Prabhupada would speak very harshly like that. One last example. Someone brought up about this Guru Maharaji. I don't even know if he's still around anymore. An old cheater guru from back in the 60s and 70s. And Prabhupada said, you should kick on his face with boot. And all the devotees laughed when Prabhupada said that. And Prabhupada didn't laugh. He was he said, no, you should kick on his face with a boot. So in this way, very strong, but also that we have to be very careful. Number one, not to imitate Prabhupada. Prabhupada had a spiritual authority far beyond any of ours, as good as or greater than Mahatma Vidura himself. So he had the spiritual authority to do that. And he also had the age and the respectability that he could do that without people unnecessarily taking offense. If we try to do that, very often we'll just offend someone. And if we, in the name of preaching, if we, instead of preaching, we actually drive someone away by our harshness, then that's not preaching, that's anti-preaching. We want to bring people to Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada's example, actually 99% of the time, was that he would preach reasonably and genially and pleasantly and talk with people and exchange with people and develop relationships with them. It's not that he was like Parashuram, always swinging his axe back and forth 24 hours a day. He was preaching very sweetly and beautifully and expertly. Because again, what does Prabhupada says? We can just imagine how responsible a task it is. So it is a very responsible task. And responsible task doesn't mean you go nuts with an axe and cut everyone. It means you take it very seriously. How can I do this most perfectly, most effectively, most practically in every sense? And like I said, 99% of the time, Prabhupada would preach so sweetly and reasonably and attract so many people. And just rare occasions, he would use the cutting technique. So that's there, and there may be places for it here and there. But this is and let's look at Vidura and Dhritarashtra. They're brothers. If I call some guy I first never met before, and I just met him at the Sunday feast, and I said, you're just like a dog, that's not preaching. That's just me, venting my anger, venting my neophyte ego at some person. But if I have someone I have a very close relationship, like a brother, Vidura and Dhritarashtra are brothers. If I'm talking to my brother and I say, you really shouldn't do this, you're so stupid. You could say that to your brother or your child or a close relative or a very close friend. You could say, boy, you're so stupid, don't do that. You could say that when you have the potency yourself, when you have a degree of respectability yourself, even material respectability of age or position or whatever, you can do that. And when you have a very close, loving relationship, that the person knows that when you chastise him, you're doing that out of love and concern for the person. Whereas if you're just yelling at people, that's not very good. So this is the expertise of preaching. How responsible a task, Prabhupada says. This is the art of preaching that we learn from Prabhupada and from expert devotees, and develop our own style from our own realization and study of Srila Prabhupada's books in the philosophy. We learn to do this and we develop this art. And there may be times when we have to cut and say, don't be a dog, don't be a dog, be a human, or, you're being so degraded, or you're doing something so wrong that the time for sweet words is over. Another time, Prabhupada had a letter exchange with Sumati Morarji. Sumati Morarji had read a letter a letter from Prabhupada, or no, it was a excerpt, I think, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, printed in a Back to Godhead magazine, talking about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dealings with Vallabhacharya, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered little insulting, joking, but insulting words to Vallabhacharya, because Vallabhacharya neglected Sridhar Swami. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, oh, you neglected the Swami? Making a play on words, because Swami means Sridhar Swami, and Swami also means the husband. So he said, oh, you've neglected the Swami? I consider that person who disrespects the Swami to be a prostitute. So in other words, like a wife that neglects the husband is a prostitute. So he's making a play on words. But Sumati Morarji was actually a follower in the Vallabha line. So she was a little upset about that, a little offended by that. And Prabhupada spent a long time explaining and speaking very sweetly. Oh, they were friends. They were just some joking words between them. Don't take it as insulting. But at the end, he also explained, he said, there's an aphorism, Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, that the truth should be spoken, but the truth should be spoken sweetly. So Prabhupada admitted, yes, we should speak the truth, but we should speak it sweetly. But then he said, but sometimes, even if it can't be presented sweetly, the truth has to be spoken. Even if it's not sweet, sometimes the truth has to be spoken. So an intelligent devotee, an expert devotee, and a compassionate devotee knows how to balance these different techniques and use them with different persons in different situations. And this is the example. We look at Vidura, who was harsh with his brother, but so loving and compassionate that he came back from pilgrimage just to save him. Or Prabhupada, if we get chastised, we don't have the opportunity now, but imagine that mercy to get chastised by Prabhupada. I'll tell one more story of Prabhupada chastising a devotee, just because it's such a sweet pastime. Satsvarup Maharaj was his secretary at one time. And part of the duties of the secretary was to take dictation of Prabhupada's answers to letters, to correspondence. Remember, no email or Facebook at that time. Everything was done by writing letters and putting a stamp on it and mailing it. So Prabhupada would dictate the letters, and the secretary would take the dictation and type it out and send a letter for Prabhupada. So Prabhupada had dictated one letter, and then the next day, Prabhupada inquired from Satsvarup Maharaj, so did you send that letter that I dictated? He said, yes. And then Prabhupada said, oh, and in that letter, I had indicated that I'm enclosing a previous letter in that letter for the person to see. Did you include that? And Satsvarup Maharaj, the day before when he was doing it, he couldn't find that old letter in the files, so he didn't include it. And he said, Prabhupada, oh, actually, Prabhupada, I'm sorry, I didn't include that letter that you said in the letter that you would enclose. And Prabhupada became like fire. He became so angry. He said, you didn't include it? I said in the letter that this letter would be included, and now this person will receive the letter and the enclosed letter will not be in it. That will make me look foolish. That will let me look mistaken. Why did you do this? How did you do this? How did you let this happen? And he tried to make some excuses. I couldn't find the letter in the file. It wasn't available, blah, blah, blah. And Prabhupada was not at all satisfied. And he chastised him at length. And Satsuma had said that he was like crying before Prabhupada over his mistake. He's shedding tears. And he said, if I could remember the words, this is close to exact. Satsuma had said, but Prabhupada was not impressed by my wet display of emotions. And then Prabhupada made the point. He said, so what are you going to do about it? So he expected him not just to feel bad that you did something stupid, you made a mistake, but he said, what are you going to do about it? So Satsuma described that he sort of, pulled himself together and got his emotions under control and thought about it. He said, I'm going to write a letter to that person explaining that I, as your secretary, couldn't find the letter and therefore it wasn't enclosed. And then I'll find the letter and then I'll send it to him in the future. And Prabhupada said, yes, then go do it. And the whole thing was over. And he also said that 5 minutes later, when he spoke to Prabhupada, there was no trace left of any anger or any of that strong emotion that he displayed before. So, and that's also a moment that to this day, Satsuma Maharaj treasures that chastisement so much, that he did something wrong, admittedly did something wrong, made a mistake, but he learned so much. And, Prabhupada also said that we should feel happy when the spiritual master chastises us, because there's so many people in the streets, no one cares about them. But if the spiritual master chastises you, that means he cares about you. And this is actually, let's bring it full circle, that Narottam Das Thakur says, Vaishnava Thakur Tomara Kukur, that, oh, Vaishnava Goswami, I am your dog. So Dhritarashtra is being insulted for being a dog, this materialistic, doggish, awful personality, which is destroying his chances for spiritual life. But when the Vaishnava feels himself to be a dog of the sadhu, a dog of the Vaishnava, that's actually his entry into spiritual life, because this is the case of the dog, like the Prabhupada said about the college graduates who are going from door to door, oh, please give me some service, I'm your dog. But when you become dog of the Vaishnava, that means you become sheltered, just like the dog is under the shelter of the master. So if we become the dog of the Vaishnava, we become sheltered, we become protected by the master, by the spiritual master, and ultimately by Krishna. So this kind of doggishness is wanted. And I'm not sure where I heard this, but I heard once someone said that our neck beads, I don't know if Prabhupada said that or if someone else said it, but he said our neck beads are like this, that it's like our dog collar. So if we could be Prabhupada's dog and under his shelter and under his protection and be like Griha Palavat, the dog is the Griha Pala, the watchdog protecting. And if we be like that, just be outside Prabhupada's door, protecting Prabhupada, sheltering Prabhupada, and Prabhupada in turn is protecting us and sheltering us. This is the good doggishness. This is the kind of doggishness we want, to become the dog of the Vaishnava. And all of this is, the expertise and the beautiful give and take and exchange of preaching between the spiritual master and the disciple, the preaching of founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada to all his disciples and to all the world. And also as we become more and more expert preachers, how we also learn to preach to our friends, our devotee friends, our God brothers and God sisters, the devotees we live with, preaching to each other and preaching to the conditioned souls, and usually being happy and friendly and pleasant and inviting. And on those rare occasions when appropriate, maybe give a little cut to wake people up. And this is again, the example of Prabhupada, the example of Mahatma Vidura, which we'll see more and more in how he continues preaching to his brother Dhritarashtra. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody, for your patience, hearing me out. If there's any questions or comments or discussion, we can discuss that now. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for wonderful session. It's really, really amazing and energetic early in the morning. So it really inspires us to have good day. And you started with the point, like it's a really, good to start, the kind of surprising and exclamatory kind of things, for the day. Like, yeah, so thank you so very much. So dear devotees, you can unmute and you can go ahead for the comment and question if you have, and or you can raise the hand as you wish. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Drona Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Acharya Prabhu. Thank you so very much. I really like how you drew that connection between becoming a dog of the spiritual master, and then on the other hand, just becoming like a dog as Dhritarashtra was just eating just hanging around, just eating what was ever, left over. I think that was.
There's also, is it the Avanti Brahmana? I'm not sure, where he's describing that the different good qualities of a dog, the different good qualities we can learn from a dog. So everything has its good and bad side.
As you were talking, it made me think of I guess there's a time to try to step into a person's life, and a time to know that you're, maybe you're just not going to be successful. So Vidura, I guess he took a shot, he took a chance, but he had that relationship because that was his brother. And so there was probably a higher success rate. The battle was over. He had lost everything. There was nothing left for Dhritarashtra really to fight for. So he had that chance. And I was just thinking, sometimes things aren't always so clear. When to, we may be the recipients of that advice, or we may be, or the opportunity may be there for us to give that advice. And sometimes, I guess, there's the chance that we may just be on the mental plane too much instead of just actually doing it. I don't know if you have any advice on how to.
I don't know advice, but I have some thoughts on it. As far as receiving it, as far as being on the receiving end of that, we always want to, as hard as it is, we always want to be humble enough to try and draw the benefit from it. Even if the person who's chastising us may not even be the purest in motivation, but there still might be some value we could draw from it. There's a letter from Prabhupada, I can't remember to whom now, where a devotee had apparently been complaining to Prabhupada that, the devotees are criticizing me a lot. I'm getting criticized a lot by the devotees. They're doing a lot of fault finding. So Prabhupada wrote back to that person. He says, anyway, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any fault in you. I think you're doing fine. Go on with your service nicely. And then he went on and he said, and if there actually is some fault, then you should correct it. So this balance, so if we're on the receiving end, we want to, examine, is there any truth in what this person is saying that maybe I could use for my benefit, even if their motivation or their delivery may not be perfect. And on the giving end, all I could say is that, number one, it has to be rooted in compassion. Number two, you have to know the person. And number three, you have to have a relationship with the person, or what your relationship is with the person will, to a large extent, determine what and how much and how deeply you can go with the person. And that you could just, generalize that it's all the expertise in just developing the expertise in preaching. That considering Kaladesh Patra means the time, the place, and Patra means the person. So who's the person? Is this a close friend I have a relationship with? We know how to, we've already cultivated this, I hate when this happens. What are the 6 exchanges? Bhunkte bojayate chaiva guyam akiti prichati. That you already have a relationship of guyam akiti prichati, that of confidentially revealing your mind, and the other person confidentially revealing their mind to you, and hearing each other openly and honestly. If you already have that kind of relationship, then if the situation arises that you need to preach to such a person, the foundation is already there, because you already have a relationship where you could speak very openly and even strongly to each other, and you could understand each other. And if you don't have that relationship, then there's a possibility that that same kind of very strong, very direct presentation may not work in the same way. Does that make any sense? Does that help enlighten it at all?
I think that's really good. A really good advice on that, and perspective. No, good. That's good, especially on the receiving end and the giving end. That was really good. On the receiving end, we should always be open for that. Yeah.
What's that? Rahugana and Judd Barrett. Remember, like when Rahugana started criticizing Judd Barrett, and Judd Barrett turned like all the criticism into philosophical points. You right in that pastime?
Yeah.
Oh, you're acting like this, you're acting like that, and Judd Barrett say, "Oh, actually, you're correct," because the I can't remember the details right now. I just remember that he did this sort of, turn the material criticism into spiritual philosophy. If you remember that pastime, he did that nicely. Anyway, yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Anything else? Question or discussion? If not, announcement for Sunday feast.
Yeah, so we'll have our Sunday feast program today, starting at 4:30. It's a rainy weekend, so we'll be, and the weather's starting to change, so our prasadam will be inside. And we're going to continue the study of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And it is as you mentioned in the class, every once in a while, Srila Prabhupada will use kind of cutting words about certain groups and certain topics. This is a topic about modern day yoga, where Srila Prabhupada uses, is very, 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 very strict on the differentiation between modern day yoga and the real yoga, the purpose of real yoga.
Nice.
So we'll read about that tonight. And
actually, since you brought it up, I'll also throw out that Krishna does that too. Sometimes he explains very reasonably and philosophically, and sometimes he says, "Arjuna, you're damn fool number one," or "Oh, you're a big kshatriya, but you're acting just like a eunuch, just like a So Krishna will also do that. He'll balance out his technique. Sometimes gentle philosophy, and sometimes a real chop, a real karate chop.
Yeah, so that'll be tonight. So we hope to see everyone at starting at 4:30 today.
Awesome. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you so much, and for your kind patience. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Jai. Wonderful session.